Hey everybody, it's Mike Venus. I'm back again, and I want to start off with this a producer's tip. I call it producer's tip, right? Find out what is your best way of working. There's three ways to produce. Well, I can't broke it down to three. You got your DAW type producers. This means these are a guy or a girl person who use software, a DAW, all the main ones, Ableton, Logic Pro, um, Cubase, Reason, GarageBand, what's another one? Machine, Native Instruments, etc. Right? But what they do, they don't have a MIDI controller or use external hardware. They just use the computer. And they draw the notes in, right? You have that type of producer, right? That's the first, DAW, right? Then you got something that's called the hybrid. This is someone who uses a DAW either as a main sound source or as a tool to mix and master their tracks to finish it off or to help in the editing process in conjunction with a MIDI controller, right? Or an external hardware device that they input into the actual machine. You understand? That music in the background, that's my wife playing that. So just, if you hear that, just understand that. And then that's the majority of people, the hybrid. I was like that for a short period of time. Then you have what is known as either analog or hardware only or dawless music production, meaning you produce, mix, edit, master everything outside of the use of a digital audio workstation or a DAW or software from a computer. Those are your three, right? Now, main reason I'm making this is because I'll say that I work standalone, straight out of the MPC Live 2 or the Akai Force, right? And I have a head rush looper board. So I'm dawless or hardware only, okay? I have worked in a DAW, I tried it that way, and I have tried the hybrid setup, and I even kind of do a hybrid setup, meaning utilizing the Force or the MPC Live 2 as a sound source and connecting the MIDI controller, which is almost like a hybrid setup, right? So, okay, what spawned this was seeing the comments and the misunderstanding of the NPCs or the Akai products like the Force or the NPCs, and I'm talking about all of them, the X Live 1, okay, when I say NPC, and then the Force, and their integration with Ableton, right? Now, the way it is integrated with Ableton, right, first and foremost, is more for performance based, not to produce music, but more for like performance. So like for hypothetically, say if you had your laptop or your computer, you had Ableton pulled up. In the clips that you can have on your Ableton program, you can have loops, right? Samples, audio clips, which are, we're talking about audio, not MIDI, audio, right? In these clips. And basically, the integration is that you have the ability to switch in and out to trigger maybe loops or backing tracks or whatever on your Ableton, and then flip back to your MPC or your Force and perform whatever you have on there in conjunction with that. That's what that integration was. It's not to replace the Ableton Push, which I believe is a very superior, very capable, flawless MIDI controller for the Ableton software. The Force, the MPC, no. Now, people get upset. It's easily. It can be easily explained. Number one, the Push 2 controller has a sophisticated script that is perfectly in line with Ableton. Where any other type of MIDI device, you will either have to do MIDI mapping learn to try to program it to it, or it has somewhat of a basic script if it has one already set up for controls of Ableton. But it's not in no way equal or superior to the Ableton Push. The next controller I might consider that's could give it a run for money, talking about the Push, is the Launchpad Pro Mark 3 using Ableton, but that's in a hybrid setup. That's not just like a DAW or, dawless setup, right? The Force and the MPCs run off of the MPC software. Okay, what are the MPCs and what is the Force? First and foremost, they are a sampler. So that means you can either bring audio in from an external device and sample it into it, or you can put samples on a SD card, flash drive, whatever, and import it into here, right? Because it's a sampler. Or you can use the internal sounds that's inside here and turn them from MIDI into a sample or audio. You're basically dealing with audio. So when you're dealing with the MPCs or the Force, think sampler first, right? These samples are either going to be put on a drum rack or drum track or drum program or a key group program, which is basically taking a sample and spreading it across the keyboard chromatically, right? And depending on what octave on the keyboard it is, it will either speed it up or slow it down or play it in tune, but slightly detuned in either direction. But you're dealing with samples or loops or audio clips with this machine outside of the plugins that come in it, or if you connect any MIDI device or something like that. What you can do, you can send MIDI out to trigger those machines as a sound source. But if you want to bring that in here and play within it, you're going to have to auto sample it. So first and foremost, the MPCs and the Force are samplers. Then secondly, they are synthesizers, right? Because when you go into the program edit, dealing either with the drum program, when you tweaking your samples, or you go into the key group, you are doing what they call sample synthesis. The plugins that come in here, drum synths, the plugins, the electric, bassline, tube synth, and if you got the Force Hype synth, which got analog, wavetable, FM, and sample-based synthesis, that's what you're working with, a synthesizer then. And you can auto sample that and turn that into a key group, right? So once you get, and then finally it's a sequencer where you can basically place these patterns, right? Or trigger these samples and put them into patterns on a linear time frame or a big ass loop, It's a sequencer. Now, with the recent update with the Force, the 3.5 was 3.6 now with the drum synth, but 3.5, they say you can import Ableton projects into the Force. Now, where the confusion is coming in is that people once again believe that they can control Ableton like they can control it with Ableton Push 2, 1, or the Launchpad. But even with the Launchpad, you don't have as much control, as sophisticated control as you would with the Push 1 or 2 controlling Ableton. You understand? Now, these are two different softwares. No offense to Akai, but their software is not even close to Ableton's in comparison. So even that right there, you're going to have some confusion. That's almost like they're speaking two different languages. Like if they were speaking Italian and Spanish. Yes, they have certain words that are similar because their origin might go back to, well, the origins of it have part of it going back to Latin, right? But there's other words that they say that don't even sound remotely alike, and that's where the communication is not transferring. So in this, the reason why I'm making this is because I saw a video from Pink Buddha, and it was just like it was kind of annoying. I don't know if he was doing that for clickbait or he was just being willfully ignorant of the fact that this is a hardware device. This is a sampler, a synthesizer, a sample synthesizer when you're dealing with key groups, and a sequencer. It's not a DAW. It's not a DAW at all. Not even close. So if you're going to bring anything from Ableton into the Force, we deal with the Force, into the Force, it has to be on the same communication level as the MPC, which is a sampler first. So what would it be able to really process is samples. Now, Ableton has something called a simpler and a sampler, which are basically sample-based type instruments. Those can translate, right? Drum racks, you put samples in there, that can translate. Auto clips can translate. Loops can translate. And I do know that Ableton, you can convert your MIDI into audio, which at that point it can transfer. But if you just punch in MIDI and you're using an instrument that's only Ableton licensed and Ableton understands, you bring it into the Force, it's not going to comprehend. Just like the plugins in the Force, if you set up a project in the Force and then try to transfer it to Ableton and its plugins like Hype Synth and all that, but you haven't sampled it to turn into a key group, it's not going to transfer because those plugins they're foreign to Ableton. They're not familiar. So that's where the confusion comes from. Akai didn't lie to you people. You know what I'm saying? And it's not difficult. If you see everything for what it is, it makes perfect sense. So from someone that is dawless, would I purchase Ableton to interact with these functions? Probably not, because I'll be limited. You know what I'm saying? If you are a hybrid producer, my suggestion would be, if you do have Ableton and you have the Ableton Push and you also got the Akai Force, I'll suggest that you create your projects in Ableton using the Push, and once you get it to what you like, then create samples. So either convert the MIDI to an audio clip. This is if you're going to transfer it from Ableton into the Force and use it to perform on the Force. You understand? Or, yeah, convert any MIDI you have to an audio clip, either a loop, an audio clip, or a sample. So that if you are to use the integration between the Force and Ableton in a performance-based setting, it will work perfect. Just like they showed it in the video, in the countless demonstrations. It's not complicated. What makes it complicated is when you get people who are either coming from either a dawless, a dull perception, and trying to jump into hardware without seeing it for what it is, and vice versa. Or some people who coming from hardware that's trying to jump into software, and it's not familiar. It's not going to be the same thing. It's different. Either you learn and then figure out what can communicate and deal like that, and then it'll work perfectly. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I would suggest, like, if you have a hybrid set, use the Force more like a DJ controller or a performance-based instrument in that retrospect. If you were to swap your projects from Ableton into the Force and vice versa. The only way it's going to really communicate is if you're dealing with audio in the form of a sample, one shot, a loop, audio clip. That simple. Any MIDI, if it's an instrument that's in here and it's MIDI, and you try transferring it in there, and it's going to have the MIDI, but you ain't gonna hear nothing, because that instrument is foreign to that, and vice versa. So don't make this shit complicated. Make it very simple. But this goes back to what I stated from the beginning. As a producer, know what type of production workflow that works best for you. I tried the DAW only. I was not inspired. Not saying anything bad about Ableton or any DAW. It's just I get no inspiration. I tried a hybrid setup. It worked to an extent, but I eventually went to the dawless setup because of the fact that I am a traditional musician. I play the guitar and I play the keys. I'm used to touching things and interacting with things in that fashion, then staring at a computer screen to try to like make music. That's not for me. So understanding, going from these different things, I had to understand and see it for what it is. And if this is helpful to anybody that's out there, just test it out, figure out which way works best for you, and just stay with it. Just because Ableton 11 just came out doesn't mean I need to stop doing what I'm doing with the Force and the Live too, to just hop straight into getting the Ableton 11 in a push 2 controller, because I tried that workflow. It doesn't work for me. This works best, and I actually produce more music working straight into the standalone machines than I did working in a hybrid setup. And that's the other thing. You got people saying, well, why don't Ableton make a standalone device? That's not their strength. Their strength is software. If they made a put it like this, if the Force, let's say the Force was push 3, hypothetically, right? Akai built the machine. Ableton will have to give license to Akai to put their software inside the machine. If they do that, they're giving away their power, because now people are going to be more drawn to buying the machine, like many did run out and grab the Force, assuming it's Ableton in a box. You know what I'm saying? Then seeing it for what it is. Ableton makes their money off of software, not MIDI controllers and not standalone hardware. Akai makes their money mainly off of standalone hardware and MIDI controllers than software. That's just what it is, and that's their strength. You know, if they try to jump and do the opposite, it's just going to be chaotic, and it's not going to end well. So, anybody out there, if this was helpful, let me know. If you feel that I was wrong in my explanation, let me know. If it was helpful, let me know. Thumb it up, share it, subscribe. I got more production tips coming down the way. And with that, be safe, be blessed. Mike Venus out.